Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We've got great friend of the show, Jeff Stein, on. He's going to update us on any possibility of economic stimulus between now and election. What is going on in the economy? Where does all of that stand? Don't hold your breath on any good news there. We also have Jacob Blake Sr. in the show to give us an update on his son's condition and what's going on there, but also react to events that we've all been watching unfold out of Louisville. But we wanted to start with a spate of new Battleground polls, which, I mean, they really show a very mixed picture at this point.
Things are all over the map, Krystal, as far as we can tell here. So we have a Washington Post ABC News poll, which came out yesterday. Now, that poll actually are the best two state polls that we've seen for Trump in months, showing likely voters, and again, likely voters, that's the key thing that we need to be looking at 51% for Trump, 47% for Biden. Trump up by 4 in Florida, his best poll there by a mile for quite a long time. Now, amongst registered voters, it was 47 Trump, 48 Biden. So you can see, again, why it's so important to look at likely voters. Then among Arizona voters, so I don't think they did a likely voter screen there. They says Trump is at 47% and Biden at 49. So if he's at 47 and 49, you can generally price in some sort of likely voter edge to Trump there. Again, these are the two best things that we've seen. And as we basically have said, there is no path to the White House for Trump that doesn't run through Florida.
Yes.
He has to win Florida. He could win Florida and Pennsylvania, but he has to win Florida at all costs. These are very good polls for him.
Yeah, they are. I mean, he has to win Florida. He really has to win Arizona as well, because where things stand today is essentially Biden appears to be holding pretty strong in the industrial Midwestern states. In all the ones that Hillary won, plus Michigan and Wisconsin, he seems to be doing pretty well. And the Trump campaign seems to be pulling back in Michigan in particular. So he only really has to add one more thing to that. He could add Florida. He could add Arizona. That would give him enough and put him over the top. So Trump basically has to win both of these two states. But you can see from the polling that, he's in position to potentially pull that off. It's also fascinating because Arizona is one of these states that is really shifting and realigning very quickly in real time, to the point where now Arizona actually consistently polls to the left and more favorable results for Democrats than Florida, which is a very, very new development and is more in a range of like Pennsylvania than what it used to be, which was like a really pretty solid red state. So interesting dynamic there. We also have some, the Senate race is also staying very competitive because it's so close here as well. Yeah,
it's so fascinating to see how the maps are changing there. Nate Cohn over at the New York Times actually notes that things in Florida are actually more clear, in favor of Trump than they are in places like Iowa, which just doesn't make a lot of sense. But, I mean, that's essentially how we're looking at it. And you can see some of the breakdown there demographically. Once again, you can just see how, in general, for Trump, that in Florida, that Hispanic support is something that people are just really not capable of understanding. I mean, we're looking at a 39% approval in Florida. And then amongst Hispanics, and even then amongst black voters, he's doing 11 points, and amongst white voters at 60. And so overall, still the one thing that could save Trump is that Hispanic support. His senior support has also, in this poll, rebounded slightly to 52-44, which is not what it was previously. So things might be turning around for Trump there. But overall, we see a huge swing in college-educated white voters that are going towards Joe Biden. And if anything, that is what's going to put him over the edge.
States with older white populations are moving strongly towards Biden.
Yes.
I mean, you've seen Maine has the oldest population, I think, in the country, and also the whitest population in the country. And they have gone overwhelmingly now for Biden. I mean, it's a huge shift that you can see there. And Iowa's a perfect example of a state that, Democrats didn't really even think would be particularly in play. But you have this demographics. And also, it's ironic. It's not what the pundits would have predicted of the white states are going to be the ones that are great for Joe Biden, and the more diverse ones are going to be harder for him to pull off. But that is, in fact, exactly where we are.
That's it.
I also wonder how some of the COVID politics and response plays out in some of these states, because Iowa's a perfect example. They had a really bad outbreak, and their governor, we covered the governor approval ratings, their governor handled it terribly. People has one of the worst approval ratings of governors in the country. They had massive outbreaks at meat packing plants. You have to wonder if some of that also plays into Biden's strength there, in terms of just, they lived through and are living through an incredibly failed response. It's very manifested and very clear to them.
I can't see how it doesn't. I mean, Joni Ernst, let's go ahead and throw the New York Times polls up there from Nate Cohn. So the New York Times went ahead and they just polled Iowa and Georgia and Texas. And they found in Iowa in particular that Biden is up 45 to 42. Now, these are likely voter polls. They also found that Joni Ernst in this poll is down by 2 points, with the Democratic candidate 42 and Joni Ernst at 40. That also tracks a Seltzer poll, which came out of Iowa.
That's
basically
right.
one of the most high-quality polls in the country, that went ahead and screened Iowa, and they found that it was a tie ball game. So, again, Trump is up in Florida, but he's down or tied in Iowa. The Democratic candidate is up in Iowa, a hard red state. This is just not the race that people predicted. Nate Cohn in the New York Times basically finding, as you said, the whiter a state is, the better off Biden is doing these days, which you find me somebody on MSNBC
who's going to say that or explain that, why that might be happening to you. We actually have more data for you later in the show that we're going to dig into. Attitudes among black voters, and I'm talking in my radar about how the Democratic Party has just completely misread the Latino electorate, much to their detriment, which is exactly why you see larger and larger numbers going to Trump. I mean, it's the only reason that Trump has a chance in Florida is because of his strength with Latino voters. If Biden just held on to Hillary's Latino vote in Florida and added to it his strength with seniors, it would be a blowout in Florida. It would be over. And you have to think a state like Texas would be the same. And this is what's so interesting as well. I mean, we've been laying out for you, I think, for good reason, some of the potential doomsday election scenarios, election night scenarios. You've got key states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, that can't count mail-in ballots by law until the day of. That means their result is definitely going to be delayed. Obviously, mail-in ballots are disproportionately Democratic, so you could see election night it looking very strong for Trump in those states, and then this shift, and will people be able to handle that? God only knows. But there is another scenario. If Biden is able to win Florida, that's a state that is likely to get counted in relatively timely fashion, and we should know the results there that night because they do count mail-in ballots ahead of time. And if he's able, he is actually in contention to win Texas. So there is a scenario in which we come out of election night seeing Biden win Florida and Texas, and knowing very clearly that this was essentially an electoral college landslide victory for him.
Here is a very fascinating scenario laid out by Nate Cohn in an analysis done yesterday over at the New York Times. He writes, quote, "In fact, the polls are closer than Florida or Pennsylvania in Georgia, Ohio, and Iowa, so close that a Biden landslide is just as real of a possibility as a Trump victory. If Mr. Biden outperformed today's polls by just 2 points, which is the margin that Trump outperformed his polls in 2016, he would be declared the winner early on election night and have a good shot at the largest electoral vote landslide since 1988. So there you go. I mean, look, all likelihood, it's probably a pretty close election, nowhere near the 350, 400 electoral vote number for either candidate, but just as real of a Trump victory is just as real as a Biden landslide, and we need to entertain both of those possibilities. Yeah,
I think if people are rightfully cautious given what happened in 2016 and the level of confidence around Hillary's definitely got this, 100% she's going to win. I mean, remember, analysts went on TV and were like, it is 100%.
Huffington Post, 99%. You'll never forget that.
100% Hillary Clinton is going to win. So people, it's good. They have justifiable skepticism about the polls and are a little bit more humble about making those sorts of predictions, because just at this point, just a couple of point shift in either direction really makes the difference between Trump winning and Biden having a landslide. I mean, it really is like that close on the margin. A lot of that, frankly, has to do with both Texas and Florida, which have such massive electoral college, numbers behind them. Last thing on this, so just to compare with the results in 2016 and show you the way in which, even though the top line numbers are actually very similar for Trump, there has been a lot of shifting and reshuffling over the surface. So again, with the New York Times polls, Battleground polls that just came out. So in Iowa, Trump won that state by 9 points last time, and this latest poll has Biden up 3. So huge shift there. Georgia, Trump won it by 5 last time. This poll has it tied, and it's not the only one. We see Georgia's basically a tie ball game in a lot of the polls that we see. Texas, last time Trump won it by 9. This latest poll has him up by 3. And again, very consistent with a lot of the polling that shows that that is a very, very tight race. So with some certain key demographics, Trump has lost ground, especially among white college-educated suburbanites, especially among white seniors. And in the other, respect, the fact that he has picked up strength with Latinos in particular puts him still in contention. So it's a fascinating dynamic and has created, a landscape and a map and a set of tipping point states that I don't think that a lot of people would have anticipated.
No, people did not anticipate this. And that's the other thing. There are data points for everybody. Make sure that you're being skeptical and you're looking and you're making sure to see it all kind of in totality. Because on election night, we may not recognize the map that a lot of people thought we would.
That's true.
And I really think that's the case right now.
That is true. All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radar. So that's next.